Welcome to another episode of Nuts About Thrust. We have John back with us once more, but this time we do have a special guest. It's Patrick. Patrick is the CEO of Thrust Flight. Patrick, would you mind giving us just a small intro of yourself so that way we know who we're talking to?
Sure. Patrick Arnson, CEO of Thrust Flight, as you said. Also CEO at Thrust Institute of Maintenance. New venture for us here in the Thrust family of businesses that is really near and dear to my heart. Making mechanics. You know, one of the biggest needs right now in the industry is for mechanics, as an AMP and an IA myself. I really enjoy watching lots and lots of people develop in this industry that really needs a ton of people. You know, we talk a lot about the pilot shortage, but I think a lot of times the mechanic shortage kind of gets glossed over. But the need for mechanics far outweighs the need for pilots, and I'm just super excited to be a part of so many people's journey to becoming mechanics.
Yeah. And that's why I'm excited to have you here to have some of your input. What is the relationship between Thrust Flight and Thrust Institute of Maintenance? Obviously, they're related. I just wanted to hear how you guys would say that this came about.
Well, I kind of answered this question since John came shortly after we decided to introduce Thrust Institute of Maintenance. Thrust Institute of Maintenance was really born out of a real need, a real necessity for aircraft mechanics. We talked a little bit before about this great need for mechanics. We were really faced with a huge shortage in aircraft mechanics just within our own business. We said, well, if we're having this big a problem within our own business, we know everybody else is having this problem. And we did such a wonderful job on the other side of the house at Thrust Flight of making our own pilots, making our own flight instructors, and using those really talented folks within our program. So it's this supporting ecosystem that we live in. So we decided, okay, it works so well over here, we're going to do it with Thrust Institute of Maintenance. We're gonna make a lot of pilots, a lot of mechanics. And we really want to use as many of those folks as we can within Thrust Flight. But really, it's grown to be so much more than that. We see so much potential in this thing. The short-term plans are to go out and stand up 10 to 15 locations all throughout the country and really try and bring this to as many folks as we possibly can.
That I feel like there's a lot to unpack there because there's so many ambitions to be had over at Thrust Institute of Maintenance. I am curious, why is John your guy for this?
So, I'm going to kind of let John speak to his experience. But John is one of these really, really special individuals that's not only this really, really talented mechanic, but he also just has this really great rapport with everybody that he meets. I mean, I don't think John has ever met a stranger. I don't think John has ever met anybody that doesn't genuinely just like John. I mean, he's like one of the most likable people I've ever met. So, being a great mechanic, being a great instructor, being, a person that everybody just is naturally attracted to. And then on top of that, he's an entrepreneur, so he's got the same hunger. He's got the same drive that I have. To go out and just to watch this thing grow. I know, what gets me out of bed in the morning is watching this growth and watching not necessarily the growth of the company, but the growth of people, within the company, and the growth of the students and the talent, and just spreading that across the country, or really across the world, is super exciting to me. And I don't want to speak for John, but I think he's wired the same way. I know he's wired the same way. It's just, he'll get this little twinkle in his eyes like Santa Claus, and come up with a great idea. And
I see it.
It's like, we have these exciting conversations, and it's never boring, it's never a dull day here at Thrust Flight.
Yeah, no, thank you for all the nice things, Patrick, but I'm trying to think
I mean, most of them.
Crumble.
I'm trying to think of something nice to say about Patrick.
We'll get there at the end.
Table it. But have you ever been seen that way by someone you get to work with? I mean, I don't know. I'm wondering how much.
Well, I don't take things that way. It's very flattering that Patrick sees me that way. I think we have tons of great synergy between the two of us. I'll have this, like he calls it, a little twinkle of an idea, and we sit down and we talk about the idea, and Patrick has, hey, have you thought about doing it this way? And I'm like, no, I haven't. So we kind of adjust. So it comes from both of us have, every one of our ideas is wonderful. I don't know if you knew that, but both of us have thoughts and ideas on doing things almost every day. We talk about it in the mornings, like, oh, I was thinking about this last night at 2:30 when I woke up staring at the ceiling.
That's if you didn't text me at 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah. And then, debating if it's too early to leave for work yet or not. But, like these things come to your mind in the middle of the night, and we have conversations about it either in the morning or at the end of the day. We're both very busy during the day. Patrick is running a flight school and a myriad of other businesses that are going on. And then I have students and daily stuff that goes on. And so we're kind of before and after that we're thinking about our next move and what we're going to be doing next. And we kind of sit down and we have, I don't even know what we call them, spitball sessions where we talk about what our next plans are.
Throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
Throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. That's Patrick's line from his other podcast. But we're we're working through that
and each other.
And like I said, last week, I truly look forward to waking up in the morning to come to work, and that's something that I wish everyone has, right? And then you have to do what you love. Do I love every second of every day? Of course not. But like in general, I am, at my heart, I'm an educator, right? I started instructing and doing different training roles very early in my life. I think I was 20 years old, and Patrick was probably in his early 20s when he became a CFI, if not his teens, teenager. So we both have that quality of instruction is the most important thing to us, right? When I came on board, I met Patrick and we decided to do this together and went through the certification process, and we actually changed the name. It was Thrust Aviation Institute. Yeah. We decided that we wanted to go by Tim because I thought that's pretty cool than Tia, or whatever. So we kind of switched the name.
About that.
Our certification is actually under Thrust Aviation Institute, doing business as Thrust Institute of Maintenance. But I came on board, started working through the certification. We had some crazy ideas at the beginning, like, hey, let's do it. We can't advertise, with the FAA before you have certification, you can't advertise, right? So how do we start building a following on social? How do we start, how do we get our website going? So I had this crazy idea. Hey, let's do an inspection authorization prep course in Dallas. There isn't one.
I thought that was my idea.
Maybe we framed it as your idea. So
just kidding.
Who knows who I was?
I guess we'll never know.
I think it was actually Mike Fisher's idea.
I probably was. Who's pretty great too.
Yeah.
We'll get him over here.
Anyways, we started doing that. The main reason behind doing that was, hey, we have this building that we're putting up. We're not certified. We're waiting on the federal government to, run through their widgets and get back to me and tell me they need me to change a T to an F for some reason or whatever. A way to get the, website activity, all those different things that help build a brand. Yeah. Right. And, the beautiful part about it is while we share the Thrust branding, right? So Thrust is already, big flight school, very well known across the United States. Yes. Has a very good reputation of producing quality pilots with quality instruction, quality airplanes. And so we're just trying to mimic that, that brand recognition, but do it on the maintenance side.
Absolutely. I don't think we're trying to do it. I think we're
succeeding. That's what we're doing. But that was Patrick's, his main thing to me was, hey, I want to produce aircraft mechanics that I can trust to work on the airplanes that I fly with my family. That's what we want to do. Right.
Well, and look, this was all bred out of, situations where I was hiring mechanics straight out of, probably the largest A&P school in the country, and they didn't know anything, and in this school, the candidates that came in had great intentions, right? And I truly believe they didn't know how much they didn't know. When you've got an A&P mechanic that comes to work at a flight school and they can't time a magneto, that's a really big problem. And I think when I reflected on that, I said, well, these guys, they don't care about the education. They care about checking boxes and they care about taking people's money, right? and that's where it ends. And that's not what we're about at Thrust Flight, and it's not what we're about at Thrust Institute of Maintenance. We are going to make great mechanics, and we are making great mechanics. We're not going to drag somebody along, in this process that doesn't need to be doing this stuff. I think at the end of the day, I know John, or I don't want to speak for John, but I believe that he's, aligned with this. We want to be really, really proud of what we put out there. And we're not going to put out a product, students, mechanics that aren't really, really capable individuals that can't just go straight to work.
Right.
Obviously there's always a learning period anytime you get a new job. But it shouldn't be a whole new segment of training coming out of school. And I think in a lot of cases, and certainly in all of my experiences, without exception, that was the case when hiring out of this other very big A&P school.
Well, what I really like about what y'all just said about that whole process is the fact that it seems like you wouldn't graduate anyone from Thrust Institute of Maintenance that you wouldn't hire at Thrust. Like, I mean, that was part of the motivation for creating the school to be able to, create better aircraft mechanics or A&Ps than you were receiving already. So I think that speaks to the motivation behind the school, the intention, and even the integrity. So I like hearing that. I wanted to ask did you already have the idea for a maintenance school before you met John?
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so you came into the picture when you already had this festering and you're just looking for the right path to be able to do it, right?
Well, I had already started the process.
You had already started the process.
We started the process. We remodeled a building, acquired the building, did all that, and then we said, okay, we need a really good instructor here.
Yeah.
What I got was not a really good instructor. What I got was a partner in the business, and really lucked out when we found John.
Gotcha. And so when you were coming into this, you knew. I mean, that was from the beginning. You were like, oh, this is going to be my role, right?
Yeah. So I knew, like, I don't know that I totally knew what I was getting myself into, right?
Do we ever?
Do we ever? And we're learning, and like Patrick talked about with the quality of students, like there's no school on earth that you could teach someone to do every single task on every single type of airplane, right?
Right.
But what we are concentrating on is, we're following the ACS, obviously, but we're concentrating on, can you use technical data? Do you know how to use a tool? And then all the basic things, timing a magneto, blending a prop, doing compression checks on reciprocating engines. All of those other things we're doing probably more. I know for sure we're doing, the students have done compression checks on 4 different engines, 4 different types of airplanes. Each one of them has done it multiple times on each one of those engines. We've timed magnetos. They are all extremely confident in that sort of task, but they also are very good at, finding the technical data, finding where in the book that it's located. And we're still working on using tools. So, it's not something that you just pick up. Somebody asked me yesterday, is this a 1/2 inch? And I was like, well, I'm 70 feet away from it. I don't know for sure.
So you still
So we're still working through that. But really, and we're not just teaching students like our curriculum, right? Like, and I know we talked about this a little bit before. We're like generally teaching people to be adults.
Yeah.
And like all my previous roles, I was training adults. And in this role, I am technically training adults. They're 18, they're 19 years old, but they're not. They're kids and they need influence and they need someone to go, hey, put your phone away. Like to come up when there's a group of instruction going on and you have one student is off on his phone, not paying attention, and talk about how disrespectful that is, and talk about, hey, tomorrow we're going to go apologize to this guy,
And this isn't always the case, right?
No, that's not every day.
We have a lot of, we do have a lot of adults in the program that do a great job at adulting, but we're making better humans, not just better mechanics.
Yeah, and like obviously not every student is that way, right? But those are the other types of things that people need to learn at a young age, otherwise they never learn it, right? And I know that every every hangar in the nation has problems with mechanics being on people on their phones.
Everyone.
Every job
Mhm.
in the world has problems with people being on their cell phones.
We're not just making them, and having this conversation just made me kind of realize what we're doing here. We're making good mechanics, but we're also making good employees, not just good employees for us, but good employees for, for anyone that these folks are going to go out and work
Yeah,
for.
and that's
And
really
it's an education. It's hard.
Yeah.
If you've never had a job before, I mean, you don't necessarily know how to be a good employee. You don't. I mean, some of the things people have said to me, some of these young people that have come to work for me, and I'll sit down and I'll ask them questions and I'll try and get to know these folks, and some of the things, we'll ask, okay, what motivates you, and they don't really know how to articulate that, and it's like they haven't thought about, this kind of stuff. And you see so many aha moments when somebody comes to work for you, and it's, maybe one of their first jobs, right? Or maybe they've never been in a job like this before. And, it's like, I've got this really great person, right?
Mhm.
I've got this really great individual, and I know I can get them there, but we need to lead them to, that aha moments, and there's so many of these aha moments,
Right.
and developing people is kind of what we're talking about here.
And I think that's what's very unique about our program. We talk about it being a 12-month, and we talked about this last week. It's not necessarily accelerated. It's the same number of hours as courses that are done over 18 months or 24 months. But what we're doing is we're coming to work every day, right?
Mhm.
They're held accountable if they're late. They're held accountable if they're gone to lunch for too long. They're held accountable if they're out, on break for too long. Like, those are the types of things that we're doing that are just like having a job,
Yeah.
right?
But it is a job,
Yeah,
and
it's a safe place to make those mistakes. They're not going to get fired.
what a great thing to say. It's a safe place to make those mistakes. It's a safe place to learn.
Yeah. And that's really what
love
we're
that.
creating. And I want, like, what I really want from Thrust Institute of Maintenance is for employers, when they hire people out of Thrust Institute of Maintenance, go, hey, the people that come out of this program are solid. Not just are they good mechanics, right? But
Right.
they're a good employee. They're reliable. They understand situations,
Yeah.
social situations, and all sorts of. They can deal with, they can talk to owners of airplanes. They can deal with their shift lead if they're working at an airline.
Mhm.
Wherever they happen to go, they're going to fit in because they've been exposed to all these different sorts of environments.
Right.
And I know that's the end product at Thrust Flight with the pilot side.
Yeah.
And I know that's going to be the end product at Thrust Institute of Maintenance. I mean, we're only on our second class. We haven't graduated to class yet, so we're still really new in this space. But I'm confident that that's where we're headed, and that's our mission. And we're doing this very much on purpose, with an eye on quality, and that's not going to slip. It's who we are. It's how we're guided, and it's something that we have a lot of experience doing, within the Thrust family.
Yeah. We're probably one of the few A&P schools in the country that are not either, a state-owned entity or owned by an accountant somewhere, right?
Well, let's talk about the demographics a little bit, because, we talk about flight schools, right? How many flight schools are out there? I think there's like 13 to 1,400 flight schools. Do you have a flavor on how many A&P schools
There's
there are in the
100,
country?
I think it was 103, the last report, approved Part 147s in the country.
And how many of those are actively teaching
It's in
students? Do you have any idea?
the high 80s. It's getting higher.
Okay.
Like, they're approving more under the new rule. This certification is, people are starting to see that there's a shortage, but there's not 1,000 schools like there are on the flight school side.
Do you have an idea of, and I've looked at the data, but I know it's changing. How many of those schools are doing 2-year programs, 18-month programs versus, say, a program like ours?
There's like, I know of 2 other 12-month programs in the country.
Okay.
That's where most of the schools are associated with a community college. Tarrant County Community College has a 18-month program or a 24-month program or a 30-month program, depending on, which
Well, I know it's a
section.
popular program. They're on a wait list, aren't they?
They have a very long wait list. I was talking to a student last week that has been on the wait list for a potential student. He's been on the wait list with them for 12 months, and he just got his class date. So he can start in the fall, September of this year. But the only availability was at night, and that's I think it's 33 months is how long it'll take him to get through the program.
Wow.
Um, and that's,
I guess it's a great option if you want to continue to work
yeah.
and go to school.
But, he is, I just sent him an enrollment agreement this morning. He's coming to our program. He's going to start in July. And so he'll join us in July, and he'll have his A&P at, next July, really, after he would essentially be done with, his generals at that program. He'll be completely all the way through with our program. So it's just that, talking to young people, and we don't accept every person that walks in the front door, right? We want to make sure that the individuals that we accept into our program are going to be successful, and not every 18-year-old is ready for that. So you come in, and
not every 30-year-old is ready for that
right.
either.
Right. And so you have to do, well, not have to, but you go through sort of an interview process.
We have an interview process, an assessment process, where we go through and make sure that they're picking the school for the right reasons. Nice. Because, and I know I talked about this last week, and Patrick can probably attest to this. If you talk to older A&Ps, not that they're all old, right? But
most of them are old.
If you talk to older A&Ps, they talk about when they were in A&P school, they said the first day they sat down, they looked left, the person told them, look left, look right. Those people most likely will not be here at the end of the program. And that's not what we want.
Right.
We don't want this huge dropout rate because we've accepted people into a program that wasn't for them.
Well, and I think right now, industry-wide, there is a huge, huge problem of people going to these schools, right? They're getting through the program, and then they're not testing at the end of it. They're not actually taking the practical test that blesses them and makes them an airframe and power plant mechanic. So they get all this education, and then there's all this fear that's surrounded of taking this final test that makes them an airframe and a power plant mechanic, which I just think is so sad. And these numbers are they're huge, right? Yeah. And I think that's one thing that we're doing really well, and we're being very careful that we want to make sure that everyone, after they get out of our program, is certifying as an airframe and power plant mechanic. Our job is not done until you have that certificate in your pocket. Our job isn't done when you've made it through airframe and power plant and the general courses at Thrust Flight.
No.
And I think we're doing a really good job where we're getting to know, we're introducing these students to the people that are going to be doing these final evaluations. So it's not this huge fear-based, really, this big scary thing at the end of this program. It's somebody that they know and they've seen and they feel comfortable with.
Right.
If you were to ask me, like, industry-wide, what the biggest problem at A&P schools is, it's probably, at least for the people that make it through the program, that's the biggest problem. Is I think it's like 20 to 30% of the people that actually make it through the program aren't becoming A&Ps. And I mean, that's just crazy to me. You spend all this
it's
money.
really low.
What is that a lack of? Like
so
you said,
I believe that it's, I mean, I have my own personal opinions about the other schools and what they're doing. We have actually, we have a date that all of our students technically graduate from our program. We're not doing a graduation ceremony on that day. We're not doing a big celebration. We're immediately rolling them into an A&P, like a test prep course.
Okay.
So they graduate, then they're going to go into a test prep course. We're going to get all of the students in each class through one iteration of their test, and then we're going to do a graduation ceremony 3 weeks later with all of them with their cards in their hand. Right. So I think that it's not that we're not recognizing that they completed all the curriculum, but we're going to celebrate when they're licensed. And we want every student to get licensed.
Small detail, huge differentiation in my opinion. Because what we're saying is that your job is not over, right? The job is not done yet. And I think that I think these schools are saying our job is over when
you've passed our course.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's not the case. It's not responsible.
Yeah.
Because our guys aren't selling our course, you're prepping people for a career.
Right.
And I think that's a big deal.
Well, and I do, and Patrick does. At the end of the day, we really care about each one of these students, and maybe to our detriment. Like, we're really personally invested in a lot of these students. And as we get more and more, I lose more and more sleep worrying about student X, or, hey, what can I do to make this better for, you have different people that learn in different ways, and we're always thinking about and trying to evolve.
Well, and that's something that we'll continue to do.
Yeah, we're gonna do
and
that
I'm
forever.
committed to continuing to do that. As we've scaled some of the other businesses and they've gotten really big, everybody's fear was, oh, we'd lose this culture, we'd lose this personal touch, we'd lose this this care, right?
Right.
And I think we've done a great job maintaining it, even in those other businesses as we've scaled, because we put it first, right? We put the students first. Every conversation we have is about that. Yes, we have lots of other conversations about bottom lines and balance sheets and P&Ls and things like that, right? But the conversation, the first conversation, the most important conversation is a gut check. How are we doing, right? Like, are we doing all the right things for the students? Because what I've figured out, that's what drives everything else. That's what drives the success of the business. That's what drives the success of the individuals is putting them first, and everything else gets easy. So
and then that sort of culture really comes from the leadership that who's running the school. Patrick sensed that mentality. I carry it on to my staff. Our instructors understand that the students' education is what is most important, right? And that we need, not that we're catering to people, but we're delivering things in different manners, because everyone has a bit of a different learning style.
Yeah.
Some people learn really well from reading. Some people learn really well from someone teaching a lecture, and we're combining all of those things together to really get those. This is not easy subject matter.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's pretty tough. We get through physics. We do basically what would be college level physics in 2 days, and some students have a hard time with that. And
well, those are the students that we spend extra time with.
Yeah. And so I spend an extra hour after class. We have study halls. We have programs that help them. They're doing stuff at home. There's all these things that we put together. That at the end of the program really help.
Like I've been in places where I signed up for something and maybe I was a part of something and I didn't necessarily feel like I was paid attention to or catered or helped, right? I'm like, oh, I'm here and now what? It doesn't seem like that's going to happen for you guys. And I think that's just because you see an opportunity more than you do anything else. You see an opportunity for the student to succeed. You want them to see their opportunities. And I think if I'm a part of a program and someone's teaching me to address something head on, I feel like I'm going to do that in my career. So it seems like in the long run, someone's going to be much better off for being around even just people who have the viewpoints you'll have, let alone the programs you've created. So
it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
So what I'll say to that is we're going to come in, any student that comes into the program, we're going to very, very clearly articulate what our expectations are, and then we're going to hold that individual accountable to that. This program is not for everybody. This program it's an intense program, and there's a lot of material to digest in a 12-month period of time, and it is a full-time job. And then anybody that doesn't think that it is shouldn't do this. That's part of who Thrust Flight is.
Yeah.
We will bend over backwards to help anybody that's willing to help themselves. So I'm careful of using the word cater, because at the end of the day, it's a two-way street. I'm going to work as hard as you are. So, it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And
I guess cater is the wrong term. We're delivering material in different manners to ensure that everybody that has different learning styles.
It's just a word that I'd heard a couple times, and I just like to make sure that we're transparent, because at the end of the day, that's what Thrust Flight is about. It's about true transparency. We're going to do what we say we're going to do.
We're getting towards the end here. I wanted to know a little bit more about how the students may be interacting. We do a lot of Instagram videos. We're part of the media team. I see that they have a lot of fun doing that. It seems like you have a lot of fun doing it. You come to me with ideas sometimes. That's that twinkle in your eye that you were talking about earlier.
It's not always Instagram, but
yes,
sometimes it's Instagram.
But you have good ideas, and it seems like you'll have a lot of fun. I just wanted to highlight a little bit of things like that.
Yeah, so everyone should be following us on Instagram. At Thrust Institute.
Yeah, if you're not, what's wrong?
What's going on? Where have you been?
Yeah. What is the handle for? Is it just Thrust Institute of Maintenance?
But like we said, we're we're creating a safe environment where people are comfortable, and when you're comfortable, you learn more. Just like Patrick talked about with the examiners. If you go in and you're all nervous and you're not comfortable in that setting, you're going to have a hard time. Patrick is a DPE, a designated pilot examiner, so he does examinations for the pilots, and I know that he just tries to start things off by getting the applicant to loosen up and relax. And so we have better results when the students are excited to come to school in the morning.
But I think to speak to kind of the culture at Thrust Flight, we do have a good time. We don't take ourselves too seriously. We talk about accountability and things like that, but we're clear, but we're kind, and these guys, they go on field trips, they go look at aircraft manufacturers, and we're down at Dallas Executive Airport the other day, running a jet engine, and they're down at the junkyard down in Lancaster, and just doing kind of really unique things. You're not stuck in a lab or in a classroom all the time. Where I don't know about you, but I hate sitting behind a desk. Like I couldn't drive a desk for a living. It's physically painful for me to sit still this long in this chair, just because that's how ADD I am. And for anybody that's wired like me, it's really difficult to sit and to learn in a classroom type environment. And I think that's what's so special about Thrust Flight is we're up, we're about, we're moving around a lot. We're out in the hangar, working on some really unique airplanes that most other schools wouldn't have.
No, I mean, we're on an airport, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. We're on an airport. Like we haven't mentioned that
huge
at all.
Huge differentiator.
Yeah, there's a
right?
huge thing. Both of these programs take place on an airport where there's access to really.
So the flight program
planes.
Would probably be really hard, not on an airport. But a lot of AMP schools are not on airports.
Most of them are not on. airports.
They're in a warehouse somewhere because it's it's cheaper.
It's
right?
so much cheaper.
And
but you lose.
I love his
much.
eyes brighten up.
But it is. I mean, it's what we do at Thrust. Everything we kind of just do over the top, right?
Yeah.
And it is more expensive, but it's more expensive for a reason, and it's because it's a better product. If you really want to become a mechanic, you have to be where mechanics are. You have to live and eat and breathe mechanicking, right?
Yeah.
And where do mechanics work? Airports. I mean, it doesn't sound that difficult.
Yeah, I mean, they go.
We're so rare in that.
Even if they go to lunch, they go down the street, they run into aircraft mechanics. They were just talking about they ran into some guy who was here on some. I don't even know the name of the jet. I forget what it is, but they were all excited about it. The students, we've set some things up. They volunteer together down at the CAF at Redbird on Saturdays, and they go down there and work on Fifi, the B-29, and they've been helping them get that thing running. So. They are living and breathing aviation. Well, you have to love it.
Yeah, and they're surrounded by pilots all the time too. So I mean, they're intermingled with the rest of the Thrust campus, and they're meeting the pilots, and they're developing a rapport with the pilots, and they're learning so much more than just turning wrenches. They're learning what aviation is really about. And I think when you're in a sterile environment in an industrial park,
off of I-20, next to a car, surrounded by car dealerships.
Not that we're identifying anybody by name here. I think you don't know what you don't know what you don't know, right? So it's just such a different experience here at Thrust Flight, and kind of what I'll leave you with is, don't take my word for it. Go out and look at these other maintenance schools, and then come and talk to us here at Thrust Flight and see for yourself, how does it feel? What's it look like? Right? Talk to our students, and hopefully, here really soon, talk to our graduates and let them tell you about their experience in Thrust Flight, because I can sit here and I can tell you all day long, this is the best place to go, and this is the most wonderful program in the world, and we're so different, and all this other stuff, and I know, and I'm confident that is true, but I'm biased,
right?
Yeah. So is John.
Yeah.
Right? Talk to the people that aren't biased. Come experience this stuff for yourself, because at the end of the day, where the rubber meets the road is, are we the right fit for you? So don't pick one school. Don't look at one school and then pick it. Go out, and really test the waters and figure out what's best for you.
we're going to be putting out a lot more videos, so you should subscribe to this YouTube channel. And I would even love if in the comments you guys, after listening to this conversation, if you're still listening, I'm sure there's a lot more you want to talk about, and you're just on the other side of the screen. So please put some questions down there. We can address those in later videos. I really like that y'all put a lot of information into this one video. I'm excited to see what people have to say about it, and it's giving me a lot more ideas on what we can share to people who are interested. So I learned a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so, to everybody watching, please do like and subscribe. And we would like to have comments from current AMPs, people that are curious, like topics that you want discussed. Well, Patrick, thank you for joining us on Nuts About Thrust. And thank all of you guys for watching. We look forward to seeing you next week.